Like everybody else in the country, continuing to invest in a lot of our programs. So we have areas where we want to grow, and I think that's the part. But I will tell you, without reservation, every coach that we talked to was excited. And you know what? The ones that weren't aren't here anymore.
It's
take it away, Dart.
Listen.
We call that a mic drop.
Hello and welcome back to the Family Business. Joe Sigler Jr., Isaac Stoops. Just celebrated the first day in the SEC, and there were some headlines, but that might have been the one that it got everybody's ear. Isaac, I'm not gonna lie, I'm laughing every time I've seen it. I've probably watched it 250 times. I bet my dad's probably watched it as many times as well, if I had to guess. But tell us a little bit about your thoughts about that. I'll go. It's too good.
Oh man, it's good. Your dad's really clever. I know he keeps it kind of close to the vest, but it's funny to see his personality shine. I don't know if it was planned or not. I doubt it, but I love Joe Harris with the mic drop, just backing it up, and that was good.
I don't think it would have been as good if Joe Harris didn't just add to it too. It's like because that's a boss, and his employee essentially too, and so if he was there just kind of not saying anything, it wouldn't have been as good. But I think it's the funniest thing, probably not planned. I think it was one of those things that it came out the way it came out. But when he released that smirk, I think that tells everything. Little shrug too, a little side. I mean, I got to get the clip of just him going like that too. So new meme potential for sure. Oh, man. We had a great guest. We just got done with Ryan Broyles. I mean, what a good guy. Might have to plug his ear for a little financial talk after this, too. We might have a course, the Family Business Finance 101, Real Estate Investing. Yeah. So he'd be the first guy I go to.
No doubt. A little episode of Shark Tank on it.
Shark Tank would be really good. We kind of have a great desk right here. We could have a reverse camera going right here. I think Carrie could get that set up. We would have some great investors, some local Normanites presenting their products to us. I'll invest $2,000 for 20% stake. I think we could get some good products going.
You and I need to think of something clever.
Actually, we should just do it with Sooner Scoop merchandise. So, Carrie, I'm plugging you right now. So
pylon guy?
Exactly. So we present one product to the rest of the Sooner Scoop board, and then we can decide if we want to invest or not. It'll be like a voting process. But we had a great interview. Ryan Broyles sat down, had a great time with him, and we're going to head to that interview right now. We now welcome in Ryan Broyles, 4-year letter winner, University of Oklahoma, 2-time All-American, broke the NCAA reception record, and NFL career with the Lions. Ryan, thanks for coming on the show.
All right, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk a little ball in life here.
We thought there was no better guest, big time in Norman, Oklahoma, somebody who's from Norman, played in Norman, still lives in Norman, has got a big footprint here. And so we got to ask you, July 1, big move for the University of Oklahoma to move to the SEC. Kind of your thoughts, what it means for the university, what it means for the town, and what it means for you, just being a fan of OU now.
Man, I've got to say this, we've heard so much talk about the SEC over the years. Obviously, we know they produce championships, great coaches, great players. And obviously the Big 12, OU, we've just been running it for so long, right? And now this is our opportunity to go over there and showcase that we belong in most of those conversations, which we have in the past. So now we have an actual foundation to do so on a week-in, week-out basis. But I'm sure it's huge for the university financially. It's huge for to get the caliber of players that the SEC does on a daily basis, or I guess an annual basis. And then for the city of Norman, it's big as well. I think we've done a great job in the Big 12 just showing up on game days with 85,000, 90,000 attendees every game. Campus Corner goes crazy. The university is crazy. Norman is crazy at the same time. And so they say you go into the SEC, it picks up a little bit. So we'll see how that goes.
You can only fit so many in the stadium, but I know there's just going to be fans from other schools that are just going to show up. They're going to show up, tailgate. They're not going to even go in the stadium. So those businesses are going to be raking in money. There's going to be a lot of better tailgate scene of opponents. And I'm just excited because I think the game day atmosphere, of course, in the stadium is going to be elevated. You get these big name institutions to come in and play, but the atmosphere around the stadium, there's just going to be a different buzz. It's going to be that big game buzz for almost every game.
Without a doubt. And it's new. So I talk to my friends all the time. We want to go travel to other stadiums, get their atmosphere, see the lay of the land there, and things like that. So you can only imagine they're going to do that here in Norman. Man, it's going to be a great time. I can only imagine how excited the players are. You know, the staff here at the University of Oklahoma, coaches. You know, there's a lot on the line as well. We can't just come in here after winning Big 12 after Big 12 and not show up. So there's a lot at stake.
Yeah. I feel like it's been a long time, a long time coming. Joe, your dad made he made a big splash with his comments a couple days ago. Have you talked to him about that yet?
Talked to him a little bit about it. Of course he's going to play it off a little bit. He's going to say, he didn't mean it exactly like that. But I'll tell you, the grin that he gave after that just tells you everything that it needs to. He had the biggest grin. And then President Harris, his comments after that too, just leaning into it, mic drop. I mean, I thought it was hilarious.
Give me some clarity on that, or give the fans some clarity. How did it go down?
So, of course, we talked at. Okay, we're actually going to play the clip right now. I need a little refresher.
Like everybody else in the country, continuing to invest in a lot of our programs. So we have areas where we want to grow, and I think that's the part. But I will tell you, without reservation, every coach that we talked to was excited. And you know what? The ones that aren't here anymore. And
It's
take it away, Dari.
Listen, we call that a mic drop.
And when you're
without reservation. So he said that it wasn't directed towards one person. So he said it was actually directed towards a couple coaches who may not be here anymore in different sports. And so he said he didn't mean it like that, didn't direct it towards one person. But I was like, buddy.
It was personal.
I was like, buddy.
There's no way around it.
Buddy, I knew you were going to say this. Just lean into it. Just let it happen. He was like, people are telling me, I went scorched earth on Lincoln. Yeah, the smile says everything. He was like, if I really, I mean, I haven't seen a grin like that.
Look at that.
Hey, the little head nod.
That's a good one. Yeah, he took
the
that
shrug.
personal.
The shrug too. He's wearing the suit, so you're not able to see as much, but he shrugged a little bit too. He's like,
little Michael Jordan shrug.
Yeah, exactly. Joe Hare's lenient too makes everything. So I keep telling him. I mean, I'm like, Big Joe. That's what I call him sometimes.
Big Joe.
Big Joe. I'm Little Joe. He's Big Joe. I say I'm taking over Big Joe eventually, though. He's Little Joe now. But I say, just show your personality. I mean, you were a guy. He's very kept to the vest. He likes to keep his cards in his sleeve and stuff like that. But it was like, just show your personality. Like, people want to see what you think, what you actually want to say. I mean, you got to filter it, of course, but just keep speaking your mind. You've established 26, 27 years at the University of Oklahoma. People know your reputation. Just speak your mind.
It reminds me of when that one time my dad, what was it? Texas was all gas, no brakes. I forgot what he said, but he had a crazy pun to say about that one, and people ate it up, bro.
And people do want to see the personality. When you're in that corporate space, you kind of have to play both sides. And people are human. There's social media. There's all kind of people, talking heads that show their personality, and people want to see realness. And I think we got a glimpse of that with your dad on that one.
We did, and I said, just keep showing it, keep doing it. I mean, be yourself, so don't have to oversell it or anything. But comments like that are hilarious, and it made great content. I mean, it's not often July 1 we're getting clips like that.
It's way funnier too because it's your dad, and he does keep it close to the vest. So it makes it funnier when he he kind of lets loose a little bit like that. And
it's not like he has two personalities. Like, I'm telling you, my dad is the same exact way behind closed doors too. A little bit more free flowing with words, but he's always reserved, always calculated with what he says. But when he had something like that, I mean, he had to know in the back of his mind when he got on the stage. He was like, all right, I'm going to say this.
It was too good.
Yeah, it was so
too
organic.
good. He had that one script. He was looking in the mirror that morning saying that it's time. It's time.
He had a set with Paul Feinbaum, and then he had that set with SEC Now. It's like he had a lot of things to say that day. Not anything news or noteworthy, but he saved something for the end.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's get back to you, Ryan. So, kind of you being a kid from Norman, a lot of people probably don't know you were originally a corner back at Norman High. Why did you switch, or how did it, kind of come about? You were recruited by pretty much everywhere in the country. So kind of walk us through the transition, and then what made you choose Oklahoma? Because I understand you were committed to Oklahoma State, right?
Yeah. Man. So actually, growing up, man, I was quarterback until I was about in 5th grade. Then I had a coach by Scott Hecox. He's He's passed away, but he definitely had an influence on my role in football. He was like, Ryan, like, you need to be a receiver. So 6th grade, I moved to receiver, and obviously I played both ways. Little league, there's not 1,000 kids on the team, so you got to play both ways. So he was like, hey, I see your future at receiver. So kept going in that direction. Got into high school. My sophomore year, I was playing cornerback and I was playing receiver. So this is 2003-04. So there was still a little wishbone, some boot and waggle. There was no shotgun at Norman High, right? So if you were going to catch a ball, it's probably going to be 2 or 3 a game. So I did not have any receiving stats like you would imagine. So as a sophomore, I want to say I had 14 catches. And that same year on defense, I led the state in interceptions. So my name started getting out there. Went some Nike combines. I played corner. I went up against like Terrence Hall. I went up against these 5-star guys, and they were like, hey, this guy's real. So I got the 4-star deal. And so I was a corner peg from the very beginning on Rivals as a sophomore. Junior year, 19 catches, right? Boot and waggle, 3-4 catches a game, if that. But I still balled on defense. So that kind of kept that resume going. It wasn't until my senior year where Coach Peters was our head coach, and he said, we've got to find a way to get this guy the ball. We're going to run this boot and waggle. That's not enough for him. So they moved me to running back. So at that point, we went running back. I would do a little slot, which they had probably invented a slot for me at that point at Norman High. And then we got me out on the wing. So then I had like 50, 60 catches that year, 1,000 or so yards in receptions, like 18, 19 receiving touchdowns. And then that's when it put me on the map where guys were like, hey, this guy can play both ways. I already knew I could play both ways. I knew I was not going to go play defense. I knew I wasn't going to play defense at all. Now, obviously, I got the scholarships to go both ways. And believe it or not, I had scholarships for basketball as well. But it wasn't until about my senior year where people were like, hey, this guy can play receiver. So I started getting recruited on both sides of the ball there. And so that's kind of how the progression went. It was corner all day because I had the stats, but I showed up on offense sparingly. 19
receptions as a junior. That's one game at OU for you.
I think I had 13, 14 in one game, which is so strange. But, I played running back in high school too, so I caught a lot of bubbles. Mm-hmm. And so I think when I got here, Kevin Sumlin, receiver coach, Kevin Wilson, even Hype in those days, just thereafter, they were like, this guy's he's battle tested. He can catch the ball and be an extension of a runner. And so that's when we started doing that bubble. People don't understand that I've been doing bubbles since 2nd grade, right? So me catching the ball, I was built for it. It was fairly easy. But yeah, those were the good days, man.
Long way. And then you came in, redshirt your first year, right?
Yes.
Was that 08?
That was 07. So I came in 07, summer of 07. I did redshirt that year. We had some dogs out there, man.
Ooh,
So I remember training camp. I came in at 153 pounds.
Little light.
And they had me in the slot, and I remember going against some guys, some linebackers. We had some big dudes, and I had to run the seam, and they would just watch me from the hash all the way to the numbers, and it's like, all right, this ain't gonna work. You know what I mean? So obviously we got with Smitty and some of the other strength coaches in there, and just started putting on some weight. And so I think I will say this: that redshirt year was actually good for a lot of guys. I want to say we went in with 18. I think there were 18 in my class, and I want to say pretty much all of us redshirted. And it was a growing year. And obviously before we got there, 05, 04, they were going to big bowl games. So we had the depth all the way across the board. We had championship caliber players. So it made sense for us guys to sit back. But I will say this, it was definitely a learning curve for us. That was the first time I learned how to lift weights pretty much. In high school, it was your regular, big three. It was the bench, it was the squat, and maybe deadlift, right? And so we get with Smitty, and we're running 400s and box jumps and hand cleans and all dumbbell raises and all kind of things, right? And so, man, I don't think I was not sore after my first year there. But yeah, red shirt that year, and it was a learning process, like I said. Learned how to be a complete player, understanding what it takes to do studying, right? Not just study hall, but study film. Go out and work against this, be a scout team player. So you had to learn a little humility as well. And so I thought that was actually good for me. No one wants to sit on the sideline, but I did show up every day as a scout team player thinking, you know what, my time's going to come. And it did.
There was a lot of buzz actually about you on the scout team. And so I think that was kind of when people were like, okay, this guy's a dog.
Yeah.
And coming in, especially when you had ahead of you guys like Manny Johnson, Joaquin
Iglesias. Yeah.
I always
Malcolm
think
Kelly
of
was out there. All the guys. Quinn Chaney, whatever.
Quinn Chaney.
Yeah.
Quinn Chaney was a dog too.
Yeah.
He's a big guy too. I remember. I mean, every time I think of Manny Johnson, I think of the national championship game. The clip that still gets
played, man. That was
it's like,
PI.
It's a PI that's targeting that dude. Probably would have been kicked off the team. Not really, but he would have been ejected from the game. It's like
nowadays for sure.
Yeah.
And it was like they got away with it. I remember watching as a kid. I was so mad.
Well, he got there early. That's just what like pissed me off. But was like you gotta. That's a tone setter for them. Like what over there though? You guys like. I mean, what was going through your mind like when that happened? Because you guys played a pretty complete. I mean, went down to the wire.
We just balled out that whole year. You know, we set records in scoring. We won the Big 12 championship, cold as ever out there. And then we had about a month off. We had some guys injured here and there. Obviously, DeMarco was a big factor there. We get to the game, and I will say this: I wish I remembered more, but I felt like we would always go back there. We would always make it back to the national championship. Never did. So I will say I took it for granted. But that did set the tone, and that was early in the game. And we knew they could run around. We watched film on those guys, and that's why they were in that big game, right? I will say, I wasn't offense coordinator. I think we did the best we could with the pieces we had in play. Everyone, I can't remember profoundly, but, right before halftime, we couldn't punch the ball into the end zone. And we're playing in Florida, so
Chris Brown got stopped like twice.
It was a tough time to get in there, and then we get to the locker room, and I wouldn't say the morale was down, but it was like, okay, this is the grind. This is the grind here. And then obviously we were in Texas, and they had the Tebow deal, and it is what it is. Now I would say this: if I was a senior, I'd probably feel a lot more, and I'd probably remember a lot more. But since I was a redshirt freshman, I was thinking, you know what? We're going to get back, which we never did. But, it was a great atmosphere. It's crazy, you get to do the bowl games. I talk to my son all the time. Like, I had a PlayStation one year, and, you got the TV some years. And as a kid, man, those were the best memories. The game was a piece of it, but the little vacation feel with the gift package, that was always cool. We stayed at the Fountain Blue out there, and I met so we had Mike Epps. So he's a stand-up comedian. He was in Friday, right? Great, one of the greatest movies ever, I think. Depending on who you're talking to. Yeah. Well, anyway, he did stand-up comedy for us out there. I met Jamie Foxx and Beyonce. They were in our hotel, right? So those are the memories I have. I know I caught a couple balls on the football field, but those are the big memories for me, to be honest with you. But like I said, I thought we were going to get back, so I kind of watched that one.
Yeah, the Fountain Blue was a beautiful monument
place.
of a hotel. And I remember it just opened. There was little things like
beautiful.
Things weren't even open. I was like, this is a metropolis.
Yep.
And I remember hearing about Beyonce. I was like, Beyonce's in the same hotel. And that was before
around in there. Yeah.
She was Beyonce, but she wasn't like what she is now. But it was still like
that's what we on a episode before this we had talked about. I think it was the Venables kids. We had talked about what our favorite memories were, and it's always the bowl game. Like, and none of us probably even remember like half the games. It's just run around the bowl gifts, the hospitality suite. I mean, watching you guys like those are
the simple
days.
The best was when you guys went to practice and the kids would stay back and go to. We were allowed to
eat all your hospitality.
Living it up. I mean, these little dudes running around all the time, hopping on the bag and stuff. We over here tired in practice. These little dudes living the dream. All the snacks, the drinks. They in there playing the game, then they back out. Yeah, living it.
Our parents were thankful. We just crashed out after that.
Yeah,
They were so thankful for that.
Yeah.
After 08, then it got real. Your first year, you made your mark. Just talk us through, that first year. I think you had 600 yards or so. Stepping in that, and then really that next year really being the A1 guy moving forward.
Well, I think I have to start it by this. So spring game in 2007. So this is after the 2007 redshirt year. 2007, Malcolm Kelly was on his way out. And it was after a practice, and I remember this, and I'm sure he doesn't. But he looked at me and said, "You're next." This is before my 08 season. He looked at me, and Malcolm Kelly was the guy, right? Mm-hmm. He was the leader on the team. He was a leading receiver at the time as well, and he looked at me and said, "You're next." And for him, I'm sure it was a normal conversation. He's just like walking past me in the locker room, but he looked at me, and I'm like, 19 years old, like, oh, see, he said I'm next. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't a truly believer that I could do this. Even coming in, I was, I want to say we had 18 or so recruits that came in on scholarship that year, and I was like the last one offered. Right. So there were even people here in Norman that were like, "Hey, Ryan, you shouldn't go to OU. There's a lot of depth there. They're getting 5-star guys from Texas and here and there." And they're like, "You might not ever play." And I was just thinking, man, I balled all my life. Like, I'm not really worried about that. Right. But I will say this in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I've got to go hard. So that is not true, right? So anyway, when he looked at me and said, "You're next," I built confidence in that. So went through the off season there. I knew I was going to have significant playing time going into the next season. So 08 happens. I didn't play the first game here at home. I did play the second game versus Cincinnati. And it was really like, they call it my coming out party. And so I don't know if a lot of people know this. The first time on the field in college, I catch a little, what do you call it, like a little shoot route, right? Yep. So Sam Bradford drops back. He's looking deep, nothing there. He drops it off to the flat. And I'm running. I catch the ball the first play ever, and I run about 40 yards. And I don't know if I ever ran that fast in my life, right? Anyway, I'm 40 yards down the field, and I have the ball. I'm running on the left side of the field, and I have the ball in my right hand. And I fumble, but the ball goes out of bounds, right? Oh. We're in the hurry-up offense, right? We didn't huddle. It was very new to all of us, right? So I run in the second play. So the first play I had to catch 40 yards. The second play I scored a touchdown. So I run a corner. And so I'm thinking in my mind, oh, geez, like, is this it? Is this college football, right? And so my confidence just kept going up and up and up. So I scored that one, had a big long catch to next down the field. I don't know when that was. I jump over a dude, and he had to be the best corner. I'm like, man, is this it? I'm catching balls inside and out. So I'm like, is this it? And then after that, I'm just the confidence was there, right? When that ball came out, it was no more, oh, you're in college. This is going to be a learning curve. There was none of that. So then the balls just kept coming, and I just kept making plays, man.
I mean, if I would probably it's like 90,000 people all yelling. You score your first touchdown, even that first catch, like
you can't hear anything.
You can't feel your arms fight. Like it's just like, I mean, I would black out.
Like I'm feeling it right now, yeah. And it was so crazy. And what I would do, man, is I don't know. I wouldn't say narcissistic, but like I would go home because I had to pinch myself. I'm like thinking like, man, this is the University of Oklahoma. I grew up right here. I saw Mark Clayton. I saw all these ballers from many years back, right? Yeah. And I never thought I had the opportunity anyway, I did, and I'm playing at this level. So after the game, the reporters, they're writing their articles and stuff. And so I go ball, I'd go home, and I would just sit there and just start reading these articles. Boom, 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 boom. Every game. I'm saving the pictures. Every game. I want more of this, right? And so, man, I've got albums, I've got articles, and then like literally like while the homies were out doing their thing, I was at home just waiting for the next article. Like, all right, we here. And every game I played in that manner, never feeling as if I was going to be good enough. And I think I had that chip on my shoulder. So I think that's why I was able to compete at that level for 4 years. There was never I made it, even though I had all the accolades growing up, but I had a lot of people saying I wasn't going to make it, and I had to prove them wrong every game. And that's why, went to the workouts, thought the same thing, went to practice, thought the same thing. People would think, even after my junior year, had a first, second round grade, why don't you go? I wasn't done. You know what I mean? I wasn't done with it. I want to keep going. So yeah, that sophomore or that first year, redshirt freshman year was great. It was a confidence booster. Obviously playing with Sam Bradford, making it to the Big 12 championship there, obviously, and then the national championship. And then that year was over. I don't want to steal your thunder here, but going into 2009, we had it again. It was like, hey, we got a shot to do it again. We had Jermaine Gresham go down at the beginning of the year in training camp. We had another couple guys go down. Then I was like, man, this is kind of tough, but hey, we still got the pieces. We got all the guys here, and then into the BYU game. Sam Bradford goes down. That 2009 season was very strange. Yeah. Landry came in. I feel like the defense, we wouldn't even be what we were in 08 or even 09 if the defense didn't play the way they did. But that 09 year was different. It's nothing that even the offensive coordinators or anybody would have expected, even Coach Stoops. But, Landry got some reps there and then went on to the next year. But, yeah, man, we had some fun.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, no, that year is because I just remember – Sam goes down. Landry kind of gets his feet wet, and then they roll Sam back out for the Texas game. Yeah. And then he gets hurt again, and it's like, oh no, here we go again. Yeah. So there was a lot of growth that year, especially considering all the expectations that were built up. But sometimes it's just unlucky.
Football, man.
It just happens in swings. Jermaine goes down, Sam goes down, some other key injuries. It's like,
and that's the blessing about OU too. At least teams that have depth. It's Smitty would always say is find a way, big dog, right? I wouldn't be who I am right now, 36, if it wasn't for Smitty at 19, right? He would always say, find a way, big dog. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And I feel like that's the mentality that you have to have where, Landry, he was very green, but he came out there and he showed up, right? And we made it to a bowl game, right? It wasn't easy, but he did that. And that's the mentality you have to have in sports. You're never going to feel 100%. After that first game, you're not going to feel 100%, right? So you got to keep going. And, obviously you don't want to lose a Heisman winner like Sam Bradford, but what do? We got 13 more weeks. We got to keep going. And that's how it was. It's just kind of getting that momentum and keep going.
The bowl game that year kind of had that feel too. Was that the Sun Bowl with
the Bruce Sun Bowl?
Yeah,
against
the Bruce Sun Bowl. Stanford.
Stanford.
Gerhardt.
Yeah, and that was the quarterback, Andrew Luck. Yeah, he was on the team too.
Right.
Yeah, that was an interesting bowl game out there in El Paso.
I got a funny story on that, man. So we're talking about bowl gifts, right? So they give us the Bruce Sun Bowl. It was great. What was it, El Paso?
Yeah,
we getting gifts and whatnot. We're having a good time. The weather was great too, by the way. But they gave us hair dryers. And I'm like, hair dryer? You know what I mean? I didn't have any hair. I don't know what their thought was, but we had some guys that had the longer hair that they would comb it, so I'm sure it worked for them. I gave it to my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. I don't think she ever used it, but that was a funny deal there. Yeah, but it was great. It was a great time out there, man. Yeah, the mountains back there in the backdrop. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Blow dryer, and then next year, I mean, it was kind of a blessing. Not season necessarily was a blessing, but Landry then came in the next year with lofty expectations for yourself. Take us through that next year, really stepping up. You had that confidence you talked about building in year one, but year two, coming in, be that guy, and then it really became like a passing attack. Of course, you had it with Sam, but then you had the two-headed monster with.
Was Kenny here then? Was it in 2010?
2010. I think Kenny was a freshman then.
Okay.
2010. I finished in 11. So yeah, Kenny was here. We had some Trey Franks. We had some young guys that came in that were some speedsters. But I think at that point we did have our group. 2010. Obviously, we knew the quarterback going into the season. I wish I had the schedule here. I could probably pull up some memories from that. But yeah, man, that was I enjoyed my time here, man. And if I had the schedule here, I've lived a lot of life since then. And I feel like we played a lot of good ball since then. But 2010 was a great one. We had a lot of experience. I want to say that's when we had a new defensive coordinator. Brent V left, I believe, after the 2009 season. But yeah, man, we had a good time. The ball was going around. We had good chemistry with Landry. The O-line was doing their thing, man. The defense showed up, man. And then, what do? You guys just keep going.
We had Kenny on the show, actually.
I saw that.
He actually talked about how crucial it was for him to come in and have a leader like you.
Yeah, kind of like what Malcolm said to you. You're next.
You
like
that
chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, you got to hear that, man. Yeah. We're easily influenced as kids, and I think a lot of people. I want to say they do. Fans do realize for the most part, but they're kids, man. Like they're easily influenced, and if you get a guy that's, like I said, I'm 19 years old, and they're saying this guy he ain't ever gonna make it, or if I'm getting suspended, they're calling me a thug and things like. It's like you don't know me. Those things are they can hit home to some players. And imagine if you got the drops, which we have some players that had the drops, and then you read an article about the drop, and you're 19, 20 years old, and this has been your life, it will mess up your mind, right? So you've got to be real thoughtful about that. But yeah, like you said, but Kenny, even Malcolm saying something to me and lifting me up. I think that's why OU's so great. Even to this day, Mark Clayton I still talk to. Mark Clayton is why I still talk to the younger guys, right? And so I did, Kenny, I hosted Kenny on his trip. And just like I would have treated Kenny, I would have treated anybody, as a brother, teammate that's going to come in here. I show him a good time. Hey, this is what we expect. I'm going to keep it real with you, And so he was drawn to that. And obviously he knew he had the opportunity of coming in because we had some guys leaving to go play ball. But, that's the University of Oklahoma is special in that way where, there's going to be players ahead of you. There's going to be stats and accolades that you want to accumulate, leaderboards that you want to be on. And, that's why guys want to come. They want to come compete. Okay.
We're actually going to put up the 2010 schedule a little bit so we can reminisce a little bit.
There we go. Utah State. Yeah. Florida State. Florida State was at home. There we go. Yeah. So the talk of the town was that Florida State game. Yeah, man. And I want to say I caught so many balls during that game. But, yeah, they had a guy. He was a cornerback, and they said he was great, and we all beat him up. We beat that guy up, slant and goes, and pushing him out of bounds. He's getting PIs. He was not happy about that. But even Utah State, man, at the very beginning was a great time. Florida State, Cincinnati at Cincinnati was a pretty neat experience, which I think we played well. It was a tight game there. And then obviously OU Texas, you know. That game is a game in its own. That's our Super Bowl. That's their Super Bowl. Hell of a time out there, man. It's hot, and I will say this: every team is nervous. I don't care how well you played the weeks before. You don't know what's going to happen in that game. Obviously, we've seen that years past, but man, it was great times. And then you just go down the list. I remember Colorado that year. I scored like 3 touchdowns. And
you have a favorite game?
People ask that all the time.
Like
man.
setting the record against Kansas, but that's like an obvious one. Like,
man, people ask that all the time, man. I will say this: the first game that I explained my freshman year, you know, just building the confidence. That was probably my most favorite game. I've scored a lot of touchdowns, and you know, but outside of that, man, I tell people it's less about what I did or what we did on the field. I'm sure you can talk to a lot of guys. It's about being in the locker room with those guys. You know, the stories of guys falling out during workouts and guys kicking over trash cans because Smitty's mad, which I was a part of that. You know what I mean? Those are the stories, man. The bowl gifts and things like that, and study hall and the funny stories, you know. But yeah, football is what brought us here. But the brotherhood was built really in the locker room, in the classroom, and the study hall and the weight room. To be honest, I feel like we spent more time there than we did on the game field.
Mm-hmm. How do you continue that brotherhood when we live in an era where there's transfers? You know, there's free transfers. It's hard because you talked about Mark Clayton setting up, you know, maybe Malcolm Kelly, and you still talk to Mark, and then Malcolm Kelly telling you're next, and then you to Kenny, and then so on. But those are guys who spent 3 or 4 years at a program.
I think
and so that's hard when you live in an era which is the fact of the matter of guys are, you know, most guys are going to be here 1 to 2 years tops, one way or the other.
Yeah, football was built on loyalty, putting your time in, and there was a bit of seniority as well. You know, guys that get scholarships has more opportunities. Walk-on guys have an opportunity, but less so, right? But everyone knew if you were on that roster, you had an opportunity to move up. Mm-hmm. There were times even where when I was playing ball back in 2010 or whatever it might be, guys fell off in the weight room before they fell off on the practice field. And that was a differentiator. Guys did not go and transfer because they weren't playing in the game. They were transferring because of the workout was too hard. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, the game is different, right? Obviously, we know that. Guys are getting paid and they're here 1 or 2. There's no loyalty. So I don't know how you carry that on when a guy's here to, I wouldn't just say get a check. Obviously, they want to go have some playing time. But if you're not going to put your time in and set a presence here or even want to be a Sooner legend or compete to be a Sooner legend, I don't know how you carry that on. Now, we do know guys are going to leave early. You know, that's another thing. But if you're popping in for a year and you're out there and then you want to come back when there's a big event and you want to show up, I'm not a fan of that. We've had guys that were here 1 or 2 years and they left and transferred to another team, but then they come back for events. Mm-hmm. That's not the football I was a part of.
It is weird because I've talked about a little bit with, you know, Sooner Club or any alumni event.
Yeah.
It's going to look different in 15, 20 years. Because you're going to have guys who've stuck around, but then you're going to have guys who are like a year or 2. And it's not going to be the camaraderie. And that's not really you're going to see anything on the field, but it's just going to be different moving forward.
Yeah, that's a fact. And I don't know how you mend that, you know.
You don't. I mean, like.
It's just new now. Yeah.
It's just something you learn, you know, with the punches. You know, you roll with the punches. But it's just something to think about that doesn't really have any effect on the playing field. But you're just thinking when you come back for reunions 10, 20, 30 years down the line, it's not going to be that same brotherhood. And I think part of people always say like it's an old opinion or old head. I think part of it is not like, I mean, we want guys to have freedom. You know, we want guys to have the ability to transfer for, you know, a number of reasons. But I think just people know that they're missing out on so much.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be able to see that right now.
That's a fact. Yeah. Those guys that want to come in and leave. And it's like, I will say this, my life is great now that I am a Sooner legend. Call it that, right? Mm-hmm. You know, game days are sweet. The events I get to be a part of are sweet. I didn't know I was going to have that then. You know, your head's in the dirt and you're working. But it's a special community to be a part of, even as you get age. And I tell people all the time, even the highlights or the accolades or any of that, like it gets sweeter with time. You know, coming back seeing Joe C, coming back seeing Stoops, Smitty, some guys in the player personnel or even in whatever. You know, even some of my old teachers. You know, it's special to come back and be involved. and it's very heartwarming. And like you said, I'm not sure if the older guys, or I guess the newer guys, will get that, but there's going to be some guys that are going to stay around. You know, there's going to be some loyal guys that still watch Sooner football at 8, 9, 10 years old, and they make it a pact with themselves and their family that they're going to be a Sooner for life, and they do that. You know, and those guys should be rewarded.
Yeah, and you mentioned, leaving early, and some guys do leave early, but that's because they're, talented and it's ready for them to go to the NFL. You obviously, like you said, you weren't done yet, but kind of walk us through when you did make, it was time for you to go, but like walk us through that transition to the NFL, from, leaving here.
Yeah, well, you're a senior and it's time to go, and like I said, I'll backtrack just a bit. When I was a junior, after that season, I had 131 catches. I think I led the country in receptions, and I was up there in touchdowns and yard, pretty much everything, and so my big thing was to, when you're able to go to the NFL, you get a grade, right? And I had a second round grade after my junior year. And I didn't come here, to ball to be a second rounder. And I'm from Norman, so there was no rush to leave. And, I had people in my ear and in my corner. It was like, listen, you're never going to get this opportunity again. You know what I mean? And no one really talked about injuries. Don't get me wrong. No one really talked about injuries. Obviously, we had the insurance policy our senior year, but you can't play the game that way, right? So I came back. I didn't have my diploma at that point. I came back. I graduated. Came back and, I've got all the records here at OU now pretty much. And so that gets sweeter. And now that I have a 9 and 4-year-old, 2 boys, it's even sweeter now, right? So imagine I would have left early without those things. Now, obviously, I'd be welcome back, but it wouldn't be as special, I don't think, So I came back, did that. Wanted to get a first-round draft grade. My wife, now girlfriend, her name is Mary Beth, and I wasn't ready to leave her either. Wasn't ready to leave my parents. So there was a lot of factors on why I did come back. Now going into my senior year, having an opportunity to win championships, and let's talk less about myself, winning championships with the team. We had quarterbacks, we had a bunch of guys coming back, had another opportunity, so that was a big factor as well. Well, anyway, the 8th game of the year, ACL happens. We all know that story. Mm-hmm. A bit devastating, but at that time, like I said, your head's in the dirt and you're working. And so I bounced back at that point, went to the combine, repped out some bench, did as much as I could, a pro day here. Then I got drafted in the second round. So I had a lot of time, my season ended short, my senior year, about 4 games short. So I had a lot of time to start thinking about the next level, what I need to get done. And I had a big awakening at that point when the game was stripped from me. So we're into the off season. I'm training. I'm like, man, I've got to find a way to make it back. I could have left last year healthy, could have made it first, second round. I'm jeopardizing a lot of things. And even at that time, my agent's like, hey, Ryan, I'm getting calls from second to undrafted. And I'm like, well, whatever happens is going to be a blessing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm here for the long haul. We're going to do it. Well, my name gets called and I'm playing FIFA, on draft night, because I'm like, man, I don't know when the phone's going to ring. But I did. I met with who did I meet with? I met with Arizona Cardinals going into that draft. I met with the Detroit Lions. I met with the Cowboys and maybe Jacksonville. All those teams reached back out to me between the time I met with them, the combine, going into the draft. Detroit Lions is the only team that didn't reach out to me. So I get a call on the phone, and I'm playing FIFA too. Right? I was cold at FIFA back in the day. I made a tweet the other day. Somebody was saying like you should hire anybody that's like top 100 in the nation or something. I used to be top 100 in the world in FIFA, like legit. Like
you need to play Chad Johnson for some money.
I beat him already.
What?
I beat him back in college, and he was sad. He can look down his Twitter though. Well, anyway, I was playing FIFA, and it's at nighttime. The draft's going on, and I didn't want to like pump anything up. I didn't have a big draft party. Didn't know where I was gonna fall. Well, anyway, my phone rings. And I'm like, man, I think that's a Detroit. I don't even know if we had even caller ID at the time. But I was like, this ain't 405, right? Yeah. Well, obviously, we'll have a team here. Well, hey, we're about to draft you. This is Mark Mayhew. He was a GM at the time. Hey, we're going to draft you with our next pick. And I'm like, oh, shit, I'm not even watching. I don't even know what pick we're on, right? So anyway, Barry Sanders is the one who did the draft or announced me at that point. So I get the call. I'm like, boom, all right, cool. All right, so then we turned up. Went, saw my parents, saw the homies, had a heck of a time. Well, anyway, the next night they fly us out. It was quick. It was like, you're at home for months and you're working out, combine, you're at home. You get the call. The next day I was on a plane with my girlfriend. Well, why were we married then? 2012. I don't know. I think we were married. We were married in April. We were married just before that. I don't know.
You better know.
Well, it's 2012. I know that much. Okay, in July. Anyway,
Step one.
So the next day we fly out there. I do the press conference, put the hat on, see the facilities. Crazy thing is, University of Oklahoma's facilities were way better, night and day from Detroit. Well, it was cool. So I sat down with the receiver coach, the GM, even Stafford at that time. The quarterback then. It was cool, and then we were in it. Training camp came up, and that's when you start getting the calls about financial advisors and all that good stuff, contracts and all that. And then, you're on the field.
You've actually I remember reading the article, you made some headlines about your financial strategy.
Yeah.
When you're in the league, you're living off X amount of money. Was it $60K or something?
Yeah.
Putting everything else in the bank.
Yeah.
Was that something you just came up, or some smart guy in your ear told you to do that? Or
man,
you're like, I want to set myself up for the future, so I'm going to do this, this, and that.
Well, to believe it.
Yeah, run into the Calvin Johnson story you told me after.
Oh, yeah. I'll get you there. So after I tore my ACL, and obviously I had that second round grade, and I'm like, man, I could have made it junior year. I don't know what's going to happen. Well, anyway, I was like, listen, whatever happens when I get drafted, obviously a check comes. I'm going to do the best with that. So, I'm literally we go to the rookie symposium after we get drafted. So the rookie symposium, for anyone who doesn't know, all the rookies we went to, I don't know, Canton, Ohio, somewhere in Ohio, where all the drafted rookies go. And it's like a 3-day seminar where you talk about finances, you talk about, we even learn how to cut a cigar, right? How to tie a tie, how etiquette at a table, right? From the ins and outs of just how to present yourself, right? Talked about marketing, this, and that. A financial advisor went up there and he put a thing on the board, and it was 78% of athletes go broke within 5 years. And I'm sitting here thinking, I could have made a lot more if I went earlier. I've still got a little check. This is a blessing. Thank you, Jesus. I'm going to make the best of this. So literally after that weekend, I went home, and it might sound strange, but I literally Google, right? I Google everything. I Google, what do rich people do with money? Now, rich is relative. I have to say that, right? What do rich people do with money? And they said they invest in the stock market and real estate. So I just get books about the stock market and real estate, right? So I start learning about margins. I start learning about technical analysis in the stock market, and A stocks and B stocks and rate of returns. And then on the real estate side, buying this, commercial, residential, and then found this book named Rich Dad Poor Dad, called Rich Dad Poor Dad, right?
Classic.
Robert Kiyosaki. This is before I even get my signing bonus, right? And so he's like, listen, the gold standard, America became, what do you say? Asset dependent, right? So instead of a tangible asset being something like gold tied to $1, you need to find tangible assets. So Robert Kiyosaki is a real estate guy. So I'm just diving in. What do I have to do? When I get this check, where do I go? And so during that time, we did interview with financial advisors. Financial advisor met with 3 different guys. Some guys said, hey, we can get you this bling, we can get you this car. And I had one financial advisor said, listen, you need to get on a budget. What do you spend? And I'm like, I'm not sure what we spend. He was like, well, the next 3 months, track this. So I was like, I've got to go with that guy. So anyway, we just kept hitting this number. So when people were thinking, oh, how did you live off $60,000? That was the number we were hitting. It didn't change much from college to high school, or from college to the NFL. I kept the same Trailblazer I had. My wife kept her same car my rookie year. So we kept hitting this number. And so anything else was going to get invested. So that's kind of how that went. And then on the flip side of that, while I'm diving into the world of finances, which I didn't get taught that growing up, most people don't, right? I had friends that had nice houses. I would go over there. I'm like, yeah, what does this guy do? Got a suit and tie? I don't know what that looks like. We didn't see that, right? Well, anyway, so I told Isaac this story. What was that, about a week ago?
Last week, yeah.
Yeah, so I got really humbled. I did get humbled. So, and this is maybe game check 2, 3, or 4, whatever it might be. So my locker mate was Nate Burleson. He played in the league for 10 or so years, maybe 8 or 9 at that point. And so he looks at me and, he's like, hey, you got some good startup money, right? And I'm like, startup money? This is more money than anybody in my family got, right? He was like, yeah, some good startup money. And I'm like, oh, shoot, okay. All right, whatever that means, cool. Well, I was humble because I'm thinking I'm rich, right? So anyway, there was a thing back then, and I'm sure it's not the same now, where there's ACH payments, right? So I got auto draft because probably I was a younger guy, and it kind of made sense in 2012. Well, there's some old heads that would just get checks, right? And so there was one day. So we have games on Sunday. If we win on Monday, it's Victory Monday, and then on Tuesday you go in and your game check's there. So the old head, for whatever reason, maybe they don't believe in ACH payments, so they were just stunting. Most likely they were stunting, right? So I go and I walk up at like 8:30, and I'm looking at the checks like, what these dudes making, right? So Nate's right next to me. He's making $700,000 a game. Then I walk down a few more. Calvin Johnson making like 1.1 a game. And so when he looked at me the many weeks before and said, you got some good startup money, it made sense, right? And so that rookie year was the evolution of me thinking about finances, and that's kind of the trajectory I've taken moving forward post football.
Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. I see you've been traveling a lot, but that's because of your financial freedom, I assume, right? Yeah. Let's talk about a little bit what you're about to do now. I know you got your hand in real estate, other sort of investments. So
So,
plug that a little bit.
So 2012, shortly after I started diving into the finance world and real estate world, I bought one of my first rental properties as a rookie. Had a friend of mine named TJ Hamilton out of he was a walk-on here actually at OU, and so I make it to league, and he calls me one day and he's like, hey, my mom flips houses in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She has this one at sheriff's sale, and it was $19,500. And I'm like, all right, well, I didn't even know what to ask about. Does this make sense? And I just confided in them, and so I spent $19,500 on the house. I put $20 in it, and so we're not even through the first season, and I'm thinking about renting the house out. And so I learned about the banking process, and so I was in it for $40,000, and it was worth $84,000.
You're like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, so I just kept that house, and in that off season, I bought 3 more, right? And I'm like, man, this is kind of good. It's kind of good. Well, anyway, fast forward from 2012 when I bought that first house, I bought $1 million worth of property in 2014, before I even retired, right? With that one house. And this is me 3 years in the game. And obviously I've had people in my ear that kind of like directed me and made sure I was smart and things like that. But I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do after. So 2015 was my last year in the league. 2016, I was still working out. I was trying to get another opportunity to play. I wouldn't work out with Jacksonville Jaguars. I didn't make the team. At that point, I had a boy in 2015. So he was about a year old. And I was like, all right, we got to figure out what we're going to do next. And since I already had some real estate, I was like, we're going to go all in this direction. So started buying houses, and I lived in Dallas at the time, bought 8 or 10 houses in Houston in 2015, 2016, moved back to Norman, started buying some houses, got into the share sale market. It was a good run, man. It was really good. So 2019 all the way to 2020, we were really heavy in purchasing properties, fixing them up. 2020, I got my real estate sales license. Me and my wife started a company. We started employing some people, and we still do that to this day. 2020, we started a property management company. So we're all things real estate right now. I've got investment properties. I have investors, good relationships with lenders. And so I will say, being in this thing for, 2012 years now, it's been good, and we're still going, man. So that's what we're doing on a daily basis.
Well, you're hoping that any of your surrounding Oklahoma City Metro, and they might get some uptick with, we got larger enrollee of students.
It's happening, man. It's happening. Yes, I actually fumbled into my first college rental when I was doing the sheriff sales in 2018. I was gonna sell a flip. The number, I just blew my budget. Right, blew my budget for like $60,000. And I was like, if I sell this thing, I'm going to lose money. So that's when I learned about cash out refinances. So went to the bank. They got me my money back. And I put the house on the market for like, I don't know. It was probably like $1,200. And then I had all these college kids hit me up. And I'm like, oh, geez, what's going on? You know what I mean? So then I fell into that market. And so now we buy a bunch of college rentals. We actually just built a few here on campus over the last couple of years. So, yeah, like you said, Norman's good. Oklahoma's good in general. I've got properties in Oklahoma City as well. A lot of people are coming in. Cost of living is a little bit cheaper. Even with the interest rates being what they are, people from around the country can still afford at 6-7% interest rate. So it's a good time to be in Oklahoma. I think it's our time for a run. We've seen that on the coast, and I don't want to get too much in that world, but this is what I do every day. A lot of money is coming to not Central America, but to the middle of the United States right now. And whether it's Texas, whether it's Oklahoma, whether it's Kansas, even Arizona into Arkansas, things like that, is a little bit cheaper. So it's a good time to own rental property. It's a good time to be a homeowner as well. Insurance costs are the highest in the country. That's not so fun, but it's a good time. Now SEC coming to Norman. There's a lot of buzz going on. I've got investors that just are coming in just to buy the Airbnbs. Take it for what it's worth. A lot of businesses are coming into town. So there's definitely another wave that's bound to happen.
I know a few people. I've just heard of people that they're just buying houses just for game days. That's SEC
and
ready.
There's two sides.
Just for game
SEC
days.
ready.
Just for game days.
Yeah, there's two sides of that thing too, right? Because there are people like our generation, they can't really afford homes. So I definitely have a heart to that, where you've got a group of people that have the means and that have been investing in a long time, and now they're like, listen, this is like Robert Kiyosaki said in his book in the 90s, hold on to tangible assets. And that's what people are doing now. That's the store of value, and they're doing that. So it does price out another group of people. That's a story for another day. So I want to shed light there. But yes, there's definitely housing is going to be in demand. And like you said, SEC being a buzz, people want to get their hands in it.
Yeah, and that's a small amount, but I just had to put that out there because I just thought that was crazy.
Yeah.
Just for a few weekends a year.
We've been giving our guests an opportunity to ask us a question as we close out the show. So like anything from SEC to what we're doing for the 4th of July to what we're doing now,
Man, honestly, seeing y'all boys run around like little kids over there, like that's something I want to give my boys. I'm sure you've heard this before. Like, what was that experience like growing up? And I'm sure you've answered this question 1,000 times. You Josie, you Stoops. Like, what was that like? Did you know it was special, or it wasn't until now where you're like, it's sweeter with time?
You go ahead.
It's going to be kind of a clept out answer, but I'm going to say both. Because I do, as a kid, you try to be, tell your parents thank you and try to be grateful. But even in the moment, I was like, this is the coolest thing. I want to provide this for my kids.
Yes,
I did feel it.
Yeah.
I did feel it. I mean, with those bowl trips or just,
hanging out with these guys, that was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Like,
I just think of like, you just think the athletes are larger than life at that age, and you're like, oh, I got to be around Ryan Broyles. Or I remember one time I got to shake DeMarco Murray's hand, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So in the moment, I was extremely grateful, but even as it gone on, like when we chopped up with the Venables boys, it was just like, it was even better, even better than once. So and so hopefully, one shape or another, I could provide that for my children.
Yeah.
But it's kind of both. It really was the best time in the world. We got to hang out with guys like this, and then it's kind of funny, seeing everybody. Some of those guys that we just ran around with, they played in the league. Yeah. They're playing in the league, or they're doing this, that, or the other. So it's really cool, kind of both.
Yeah. I'm the same way. Like you don't realize it in the moment, but super grateful for it now, and I'm super grateful for like the fact that OU's such a family, kind of like we touched on, because even though now that me and Josie, like he student coached, I student coached, or GA'd, and we decided that we didn't really want to do that, but like, at the end of the day, we're still part of the family, and so hopefully, we will be able down the road to have our kids around and run around and doing things, just because, like you said, it just, it doesn't like go away, like it doesn't get forgotten. So definitely, very grateful, and it was. There's nothing to not like, that's a lie. It's sometimes it could be difficult when they work long hours, but it's just like I just wanted to be like him. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, So yeah, definitely very grateful.
Yeah, y'all boys are definitely blessed for sure. Y'all got great pops too. Yeah.
Very much so. And that was like the best of both worlds. So we had it all. Ryan, thanks for coming on the show. Any closing thoughts?
Man, I appreciate the opportunity to share my story and hanging out with you boys.
We'll have to have you back on too. So a
yes.
little reoccurring guest thing.
Yeah.
So for everyone watching, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. That helps us help you. And then tune in next week for another edition of The Family Business. Remember to keep it in the family.